Hello, everybody. Good evening. A warm welcome to everyone to the Bergen International Literary Festival and this event with Wanjiru Koinange from Kenya, Tsitsi Dangarembga from Zimbabwe, and Afua Hirsch from Great Britain. And my name is Teresa Gröten. I'm the director, and I'm very honored and happy about this session. So please welcome the three of you on stage.
Beautiful audience. Thank you so much for coming. And I would like to say that I have admired both these women for a long time, and I want to thank Litfest Bergen for being the ones that brought us together. It's never happened before. I'm so happy about it. So I feel that these two women need no introduction, but I'm still going to introduce them because they deserve it. Tsitsi Dangarembga, one of my favorite living writers. I'm a huge fan of your work. Her first novel, Nervous Conditions, was published in 1988, and it's a classic. Her novel, This Mournable Body, was published in 2020 and was shortlisted for the Booker Prize. She's the author of many more works of fiction and essays, and has been involved in activism and protest against corruption and bad governance in her native Zimbabwe. And for all of those reasons, is someone I look up to. So thank you so much for your work. Wanjiru Koinange is from Kenya, has written The Havoc of Choice, which is a very exciting debut novel about the 2007 post-election violence in Kenya. She's also the founder of BookBank, which lovingly restores public libraries in Kenya, and which is also the subject of a film which has been played here at the festival. Oh, it's tomorrow, which is good, because I haven't seen it yet either, which is incredibly exciting. So there is so much to discuss, and I'm Afua Hirsch. I'm the author of 4 books, including Decolonizing My Body, which I've been talking about here. So it feels very natural that we would be here talking about the project of decolonization. I think we all come at it in slightly different ways, but it's always a privilege to be in conversation with kindred spirits on this intergenerational mission of decolonizing our world, our bodies, our literature, our minds, and our nations. So I want to start, and it's probably hypocritical of me since I use this word, but I want to start by asking how you both understand decolonization, because I think it's something that now has become such a part of the contemporary vernacular that I sometimes hear people using it without being confident they actually know what it means. You both are people who know what it means. So I want to start by asking, Tsitsi, if I can ask you first.
I'm actually busy.
Oh, you're busy. I'll come back to you. Are you having trouble with your ear? Oh. Could we have a tech person come and help Tsitsi with her earpiece?
Does it work now?
Oh yeah, that's the bit that gives you volume.
So have I got it right
Yeah,
now?
I think we've rescued the situation.
There we go.
I'll still let you come first, Wanjiru, to give Tsitsi a moment
Alrighty.
to adjust.
Yeah.
Should I go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that great question. For me, decolonizing, which is a word I've been very hesitant to use until recently, because it's, like you just said, I don't think I fully understood what it means until the practice of doing it became second nature for me. So for me, it's about asking questions constantly about the way of life, especially in a country like Kenya. We have been independent for over 60 years, but every day, the way you live your life every day in Kenya is a factor of colonization. The way the streets are built to separate Kenyans based on economic classes. We show up every day with our English names first. It's required to put your English name first on your IDs, on your passports, and reversing that is a nightmare. I've tried to do it several times. So for me, it's about asking the kind of questions that get you to understand who you are. And then finding a path back there. It's not about erasure. It's not about kind of burning it to the ground and building it up again, which is often the thing that we're kind of driven to do first. In the work that I do with libraries, we adopted Kenya's oldest library, and my first impetus was to take down all those books and replace them. And we haven't done that because then you're erasing the memory of a thing that is problematic and painful. But then if you erase it, then how are you going to make sure it doesn't happen again, or that you can navigate your way through a new future? So it's really about questions for me. It's about not trusting the things that we are supposed to trust. It's about testing them. It's about excavating them, and it's about making sure that you can go into things with a knowledge of your identity first, and that is not an easy thing to do, I think, in the current Kenya.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I really relate, and I always find it astonishing that people critique someone like me, who's often questioning the statues, the buildings, the street names in a country like Britain that are named after colonizers, and I'm told that I'm trying to erase history. What I'm trying to do is the exact opposite. It is restore an actual understanding of what these people did and represented.
Exactly.
It's the opposite of erasure. Erasure is where you don't have the thing. You see in the case of statues, you see this person every day. No one knows what he did. It's always a he. Yeah. Why he's there. And if you look not very deeply, you'll find it was probably pretty problematic.
Absolutely.
And it could be useful to see that thing and be constantly reminded of what happened, but that's not what's happened.
No, absolutely not.
Tsitsi, what does decolonizing mean to you?
Yes, well, thank you for that question, Afua. I really don't know what to say because I never said I am decolonizing. I was told you are decolonizing. And this led me to think, well, where did this word, this concept of decolonization come from? It came from the Northwestern Academy, of course. I mean, as Africans, we were thinking, okay, we want this, we want that, we want that. In order to achieve these things, we have to do certain things, and that might involve engaging with some kinds of authorities. Okay, so let's have a liberation struggle. That didn't work quite as we thought it would be. What's the next phase in this process of becoming the people we want to be? And then suddenly we're told, oh, you're decolonizing. You know, this really worries me, because here again, it centers the action of subjugation. And it means that there is a certain knowledge system that is always reproducing itself in whatever action is going on in the world now. So I wouldn't really call myself somebody who works decolonially. I would simply really align myself more with Toni Morrison, who said, I simply put myself at the center. Now, this might seem like common sense, but people don't expect that to happen. I was in a certain European country at the beginning of last year, won't tell you which one, and I delivered an address there to open a conference, and this had to do with images and the stories that are narrated in images. And I thought I had put my point across after about 45 minutes. And then somebody put up her hand and said, do you mean that melanated people prefer to watch films about melanated people and not white people?
Never.
I can't even remember what I said to her. But for me, this is why I cannot claim responsibility for that person's attitude, her question, even after having listened to me. I mean, I'm here to do my thing, and there are some people who can actually engage with what I'm doing. I find increasingly, look at this room, thank you so much. But it's really all about me.
As it should be.
As it should be.
It's so true that centering the colonizer does not feel like the obvious path to liberation. I'm really curious whether the internalization of white supremacist ideas that created an apartheid situation in Zimbabwe, for example, that have created the racism around the world that we see, it feels like that's territory you're excavating in nervous conditions where I think the quote you said, that to be a native is a nervous, I'm massacring your beautiful writing, the condition of the native is a nervous condition, that you are exploring the interiority of what it is like to have, to internalize some of these really destructive ideas. Is that a fair analysis of your writing?
Yes, well, I studied psychology, and so I do approach life from the issues of how people come to be the way they are and their motivations and how they react in certain conditions. So this for me is fascinating, which is why I studied psychology also. But that quote, the condition of native is a nervous condition, is something I had no idea about. I'd written this novel and nervous conditions. I was young. I was in my mid-20s but when I finished it. And I didn't even have a title. In fact, I think the working title had been something like The Effect of Puberty on the Female Eunuch.
Wow. That's definitely a different vibe as a title.
You know,
yeah.
You know, I think feminists of my age in the room will know where that came from. And then somebody from my extended family came up to me. He was a lecturer in physical chemistry at the University of Zimbabwe. And he is my cousin in the European system of kinship. But in our system, I am his mother. So he comes up to me and he says, "Oh, mother, I've got this wonderful book. You have to read it." So I started reading it. I'd never heard of it. I was studying post-independent Zimbabwe. I was studying psychology at the University of Zimbabwe and had never heard of Fanon.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the situation. Yes, and so this man who was a physical chemist brings me this book, and it was The Wretched of the Earth.
Wow.
So I read this book, and I was absolutely mesmerized. I had no idea who Fanon was. It was before the internet. I couldn't look him up. I didn't even think about going to the library because I thought if this was the kind of material that's in the library, I probably would have known about it. But anyway, so then I thought, okay, let me look at this text a bit more closely and see whether there is anything I can use for my title. So I start going through it. I normally don't read prefaces and anything before the actual book, but on this one I did when I went back now. And so I saw this quote, and I thought, oh, that's wonderful. I'm going to use nervous conditions as my title.
Oh, wow.
And such was my education that I hadn't even heard of Jean-Paul Sartre. That's, you know, and
What are you learning about? I'm curious.
Pardon?
What was on the syllabus? I mean, no Fanon, no such.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Exactly. So I used that. And it was only like years later, in the middle of a conversation like this, that somebody said to me, "Why did you quote Sartre?" And I think, what? I quoted Sartre. You know, so I'm just trying to really underscore what I said, that it's not pushing back against something, it is being something for me. Yeah.
How does that resonate with you, Wanjiru, with your book? And I'm so fascinated by what you were telling me about how you had to actually leave Kenya to get the perspective that inspired The Havoc of Choice.
Yeah, The Havoc of Choice was never the book I intended to write. I left Kenya because my father had passed away. I was grieving, and I couldn't be in Nairobi without my dad. I was like, let me go somewhere and figure out who I am without my father in my life. And that place was the University of Cape Town. I picked South Africa because I wanted to write. I wanted somewhere that would force me to write, and I wanted to be within 5 hours of home. And not very many places offered me that, so Cape Town was the place. And when I got to South Africa, as soon as I would introduce myself in any circle, on campus, in classes, even out like in the club, and I'd say, "My name is Wanjiru, I'm from Kenya," South Africans would say, "Oh, shame, how are you guys doing?" And I'd be like, "We're fine." "What do you mean, how are we doing? We're fine." And they were like, no, you can't be fine. How are you doing? And the thing they were asking about is because they had witnessed us go through the worst political violence at the end of the 2007 elections. And South Africa they knew trauma. They know what it's like to have all of these things happen to you and then to move on so quickly. So when they're asking me how we're doing, it's because they knew that Kenya cannot be okay. You can't have gone through the thing we witnessed and be okay. And I got the question so many times that as somebody who lived and worked on that election, had to go back to the archive, go back to the library, and begin to remind myself what happened. And at the end of maybe 3 months of rereading reportage and looking at people's testimonies, I'm like, oh, we cannot be okay. We cannot be okay. And the people who told us to accept and move on, accept what had happened, accept that a country could crumble so quickly because of an election, it was only in their interest that we move on. It was only in their interest that we don't ask our questions about the violence, about the system that made this violence possible, about elections, about democracy. We just moved on. I just moved on. And that was the beginning of the havoc of choice, because when I began to think about who we were, even before colonization, who we were before that election and who we are today, there were so many gaps, and those gaps were a result of not kind of sitting in our pain long enough, not kind of asking ourselves the right questions, and moving on way too quickly. And that's how the book came across. I could never have written that book if I was in Kenya. I would have been doing the thing we were told to do, because Kenyans are very obedient. Like, we just do what we're told to do. But the perspective, the distance really allowed me to kind of write this thing that I think now is forcing Kenyans to ask themselves the same questions that I'm still asking. And it's been 8 years of writing the book. It's been 5 years since it came out, but I still don't have any kind of concrete answers, but I'm happy for the conversations to happen.
It's been celebrated globally. I'm so curious who you were writing for. Were you writing for yourself? Were you writing for Kenyans? Were you writing with a global audience in mind? And how does it affect us as African writers, whether we do? I mean, Tsitsi was talking so powerfully about centering. You were writing about yourself. You were centering yourself. You were centering your characters. But it's not always...
Yeah.
In the diaspora, it can be really hard to do that.
I love that question, because I was absolutely writing for Kenyans. And I don't know if I ever want to write for anyone else, to be honest. I love my country so much. I love Kenyans so much. I don't know people who are more resilient, more committed to their country, and who deal with the heartbreak of Kenya so often. So I was writing it for them, and this was also such a factor when I was going through the publication process, because my first publisher was in the UK. And this is after months of, I mean, writers in the room know the slog of getting a publisher and agent. So when I got this deal, I was like, hallelujah, we're done. I have arrived, and it's in the UK, absolutely fantastic. But in the months it took to develop the manuscript with foreign editors, I kept being told to strip away the parts of the book that I knew Kenyans would resonate with. And I did so. I did so for the first draft, second draft, all the way to the 8th draft. But at the end of the in 2017, I think the book was due to come out, and I stopped everything. I renegotiated my contract to get my Africa rights back, because I wanted an African editor, a Kenyan editor, to have the final voice. And I found a person who was the most different from me. He was a man, Luo, and in Kenya we're still quite tribal, so Luos and Kikuyus, which is my tribe, were very antagonistic. We don't get along. So I wanted somebody who was the polar opposite of me to read this book and show me all my biases and say, if you're going to talk about this story that's very Kenyan and very, very raw, you've got to be aware of the areas where you're showing off your bias, where your research is thin. And he gave me notes that were thicker than the manuscript.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
As the writer means having a heart, that's so stressful.
And honestly, like that, like taking his feedback was rewriting the book, and that's the reason why I think Kenyans everywhere are just like, wow, you've done the thing, and it's I still even today have people DMing me crying because they're like, you don't know what you've done with this book, and every day I wait for the shifts to happen. I'm like, okay, so are we gonna start voting differently, guys? What are we doing? But I know it's also gonna be really slow work, but I'm here for it. Yeah.
It's hard to talk about literature as Black writers without thinking about the industry and what it's like going through the gatekeeping of publishers in the US and UK. What's your experience, and Europe more widely, what's your experience been like, Tsitsi?
Yeah, well, Afua, I started writing in Zimbabwe, independent Zimbabwe. And I had not reckoned with not being able to publish at home because we had several publishing houses. They had been publishing textbooks, of course, but they were looking to establish a literary tradition, or at least that's what we were told, that was the agenda. And I wasn't able to have it published in Zimbabwe at all. And I didn't know what to do. I'd published a play in Zimbabwe, and that had gone down well. And I thought, okay, these people who published the play will publish the novel. And they absolutely tore it apart.
Wow.
And I think the reason was that this was not that long after independence, and during the liberation struggle before independence, a lot of young people had gone out of the country to study. And so because they had been out of the country and they'd got these degrees, they came back and they were like heroes in a different way. And they went into these publishing houses and became editors, and they were men. And this was a women's book. You know, it was about a young girl, and I had in mind a particular group of people, young rural girls in Zimbabwe, that I wrote this for. And they seemed not to be pleased to hear this voice. And then especially because of the story about the protagonist's brother, who passes away early on, and she declares at that point that she wasn't sorry. I think this did not go down well. Yeah. And so I thought, okay, I'm not going to have a career in writing. I put it away. I remember I actually put it away in a big trunk at the bottom.
Oh, wow.
You know, kind of like burying it. I'm just, because it was a manuscript at that time, I'm just so glad that I didn't bury it in the earth.
And of course, this was before you could put it on like a USB drive
Yes, that
or
was
the cloud.
1980s, mid-80s.
So it was actually a pile of paper that
It
you
was,
put in a
it was,
chest.
absolutely. So then a young woman came to work in Harare from Uganda. And she became my friend, and she started a writing group. She was working in publishing. And so after a while, I pulled myself together, screwed up my courage, and asked her if she would read it. So she did, and she told me that she thought it was good. So I told her what had happened, and she said to me, well, you have to look outside Zimbabwe. You know, this was so heartbreaking. I had been in the UK, come back for independence, and was really wanting to be part of building the new nation. We had the publishing houses, and now I'm being told I had to publish out of the country, yes. So then she gave me the advice that I should look for publishing houses who published the same kind of content. So I'd been reading the Afro-Caribbean, the Afro-Pacific, not the Afro-Caribbean and the African-American women who'd been writing at that time. And Alice Walker had just published The Color Purple with the Women's Press, because I thought, okay, all these people are publishing in the States. I'm absolutely petrified of the States, never been there, you know, there's no point in my sending it to the States. But when Alice Walker, I saw that Alice Walker had published with the Women's Press, which was the UK, I thought, all right, I'll send it there. So I did. You know, just in an envelope. It was the snail post at the time, all of that kind of thing. And I never heard from them for several years. So I thought, okay, that's that. Then I had to go, about 3 or 4 years later, I had to go to England on business. I went to England and I suddenly had a free afternoon. So I thought, what shall I do with this free afternoon? Shall I go on down to the Women's Press and ask them? Yeah, exactly.
That was the last thing they were expecting you to show up.
Yeah, and I almost didn't, because I thought, no, I can't take another rejection, so let me avoid that.
It's brave.
Yeah. But then I thought, if I don't do this, I will never know, so I have to go. So I arrived there and I was quaking in my shoes and I could barely speak. I feel so sorry for the poor woman who had to attend to me. And so then she said no, they hadn't read it after I asked her. And she said, but I will look in the basement, because if you did post it, it would have arrived and it will be in the basement.
Wow.
So she went down and she was gone for about maybe 10 minutes or so. Then she came up with this cobwebby envelope, A4
They
envelope.
just put it in the basement after you
can you
snail
imagine?
mailed it
And-
from Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
And I was a student in Zimbabwe. I had to pay to have it typed at that
Oh,
time.
I was going to ask if it was handwritten or
Yeah.
Yes,
typed.
it was handwritten. So
Wow.
somebody had to type it up for me, so that was a huge investment.
And then it ends up in the basement.
This is such an incredible story.
Yeah, cobwebs and dust and everything. And she said, is this the package that you sent? So I told her it was. She said, well, we will read it now. And the very next day, I received a message. We are going to publish. Come back. Yeah. Now, the very interesting thing is that the commissioning editor at that time was a white South African woman in South exile.
Wow.
So when she met my protagonist, Tambudzai, she recognized this child. And this is how it was published. But that was wonderful. But then a couple of years later, my editor, Roz, was in touch with me again. And she said, Tsitsi, they are trying to push me out of the women's press. And indeed, they did manage to do that. And she passed away shortly thereafter of cancer.
Oh, so sad.
Yes. So when I researched my essays, Black and Female, a few years ago, I did research on the women's press.
Yeah.
It turned out that there was a lobby on the board to stop the women's press from publishing so much melanated women's, especially third world women's literature.
Wow.
And she had been accused of doing that. And obviously was not going to change the way she did things, so they pushed her out. Yes.
That's an incredible story.
Isn't it?
About allyship and
Yeah.
about the lengths that those gatekeepers will go to stop these stories being told.
Can you imagine? And the crazy thing was that I would meet other melanated women writers from the UK, Caribbean heritage, and they would say to me, Tsitsi, what are we going to do about the women's press? They're not paying us. And I would receive a check every now and then. By then, I had become a student of film in Berlin. And it seemed to me that that was money, because I didn't know what money was. And then something extraordinary happened, because one of the women who worked at the women's press at the time that I was launching there, she left and she went to the States. And she wrote to me and she says, I'm writing to tell you that the women's press owes you substantial amounts of money. Wow. That's what they were doing. And probably to the melanated women.
Because they thought they could.
Yeah, exactly. So it was extreme. Yeah.
What a story.
I'm so glad you went back.
Yeah, right. Imagine if, it's as a writer, you are very exposed and vulnerable when you send your work and you don't get a response. And it's you dig so deep to write these books, and the natural instinct is just to kind of protect yourself. It takes a lot of courage to go and confront the people in person that you sent it to. And if you hadn't, I wonder how different history might have been.
Absolutely.
I wonder, I don't know. I'm just so grateful, because I knew in my heart that I wanted to tell stories. And I knew I wanted to make films as well. In the time when the writing didn't seem to be going well, I thought, well, that's something I could do. And so that's why I was at film school when Roz started unburdening herself to me. And then I learned that actually film is even worse than literature.
Which is a big claim, but valid.
Yeah.
Wanjiru, you're both an author and the genius behind this restorative project for libraries, and also behind the book festival in Nairobi. So I feel like you are a person to ask about the state of African literature now. So compared to that experience from the 1980s, how much has it changed for a young woman from an African country with a brilliant book to publish? Is it a completely different picture now, or are some of those struggles still there?
I honestly wish I would say it was different, but it's not. So for the longest time, I've heard Kenyans, and we said this thing about ourselves, Kenyans don't read. If you want to hide something important to put it in the book. And I think you said it's about most Africans. And that really grates me because I'm like, I want to spend my life writing. Yeah. And I'm surrounded by people who love reading. So when you're saying Kenyans don't read, who are you talking about? And the work that I started doing with libraries every single day kind of throws that theory out the window. Because what we've realized is that Kenyans don't read because, first of all, the taxes on books in Kenya is one of the highest in the world.
Wow.
We tax our books 16% like anything else. I think the average in the world is about maybe somewhere between 5 and 6%. Wow. And if you're like me, who's trying to produce books for herself, because I now am responsible for producing my books in Africa because my UK contract is obviously for the Commonwealth only, for the UK only. So I have to also think about the economics of bringing my book in and printing it in India, because in Kenya, all the paper mills focus on textbook publishing, which is that very tough, very bright white paper. And I want people to enjoy reading my book. So I'm learning I've had to learn very quickly what the publishing infrastructure is in Kenya, the failings of it. And it begins and ends at taxation. People say Kenyans don't read, but we don't read because books are too expensive. But what we have learned by restoring public libraries is that if you put the books that people want on the shelves, they are going to read them. Our libraries have more foot traffic than any other. We get almost as much people as much foot traffic as hospitals. Wow. And it's because we prioritize African writing on the shelves. When you walk into bookstores in Kenya, you will find the world classics. You will find Dickens, and you'll find the Sweet Valleys, but you'll find a little shelf of African authors, and it's changing now, but it's still insignificant compared to what everything else is. But when you walk into our libraries, we've prioritized African writing because that's what people want. You mentioned Northwestern earlier, and it currently holds the largest collection of African writing in the world. That makes no sense to me, because in the 1930s and 40s, that collection lived in Nairobi. The largest collection was in Nairobi, but we stopped growing it. And so now it lives in Northwestern, and I'm making it my life's mission to bring it back. I don't know how, but I think that has to live in Kenya. So the publishing space could do a lot of work. I think there's so much great writing, not just in Kenya, but on the continent, and the gap is the distribution. The gap is that we still have to go to London to get books to come to Kenya, in other African countries, and that just means that the kind of infrastructure is still in the UK as it was when in the 80s when you were writing it. And there have been moments of kind of growth, but it almost feels like we take 7 steps forward and then 15 back. And I think that the solution is around the distribution. If we can just get the back catalogue in the places where people want to read it, then you have the economics to inspire young writers to write and to put out more work. But if we're still doing this struggling artist thing, then we're not going to be able to inspire more. So I'm furiously trying to get writing to appear more glamorous for anybody watching, which is why I'm just like, yes, festivals, let's do all of these things, because we've got to get the infrastructure.
It really strikes me listening to you. You're a writer. And writers, for anyone who isn't one, basically like to be left alone to write. We don't want to have to go to London and confront our publishers because they haven't opened the envelope. We don't necessarily want to become massive entrepreneurs who restore buildings and run festivals and become publishers ourselves and work out where paper is best printed. It's, when I almost became a TV news correspondent so that I could get the contacts I needed to publicize my books, because publishers don't market black books in the UK. It's on you.
It's on you.
So I had to become someone who had the address book that could market my books on TV and in newspapers. Otherwise, they don't sell. It's like you have to become so entrepreneurial to do what you really want to do, which is just write and have people read your books.
Yeah, we don't have the luxury of just writing. I don't. And it also doesn't feel like it's you have to build a market. Otherwise, you're writing for your friends. Otherwise, and my friends are great, but there are not many. And I need lots of friends to be able to make a career out of this. So I don't think I have the luxury of just writing, unfortunately. And maybe one day I will. But until then, I want to be an octopus, a literary octopus.
Both of your writing encompasses the political violence that has happened in both your countries that in many ways is ongoing. I feel like it's a specific moment in time that we're having this conversation. And one of the things that is happening is that countries that have sat very comfortably and looked at African countries as kind of basket cases are now being confronted by having those same experiences themselves. And, I've heard many African journalists comment that the kind of language that is often used about African elections could now quite appropriately be applied to American elections, for example. How do you feel about the kind of reception to your work or the changing power dynamic in the world? Like, is what's happening in global politics shifting the perception of your books or the role that they play globally?
Yeah, well, Afua, that's not an easy question for me to answer, because I'm the kind of writer that when the book is done, I've done my work. Either I put it in a trunk or I give it to a publisher. And I really don't market my books. I hope that my publishers will do that. Sometimes they do. Right now I'm with Faber, who are doing a great job.
I mean, something's going right, because your books are everywhere, as they deserve to be, and that gives me hope.
Yeah, well, I'm glad it looks...
The story there.
I'm glad it looks like that.
Like there's another story there, yeah. Later over drinks.
Yeah. But I just think that we have to be looking to ourselves. I mean, okay, it's happening over there, and it was clear that it was going to happen, because one of the projects I'm working on now was to understand more my ethnic group in Zimbabwe and the things we do, a lot of them which are not very nice. And in researching that, I had to look more deeply into the expansion from Europe in the late 15th and 16th centuries, around there. And the things I'm reading are absolutely shocking to me, especially as an African person, I read that the Portuguese monarch who laid the foundation wasn't the actual one who started the whole age of exploration, as it is called, was somebody who had to fight his own mother for the monarchy. Can you imagine? And so these are the people. We talk about Europe, but it's not Europe. It's also a very small group of people in Europe. A lot of it through kinship, because, the monarchies are by descent. And so it's a particular culture that started all of this and that has exported all of this. And it was justified at certain times. For example, with the Portuguese, they could not expand eastwards because of Spain, which was a powerful nation, and they couldn't expand across the Atlantic at that time. So they had to develop the technology, sound familiar, develop the technology, of expansion. And that's how they developed these fast ships, which were lightweight, etc., that they developed. And so they exported that culture. And it was clear that at some point they would have gone around the globe, which they did. And what would they do then? And so we're seeing what happens now. It comes home to roost upon everybody. And of course, it's not the ordinary people. It's just this group of people who are now buying this land and building their bunkers and this kind of thing. So I'm not actually surprised. I can say I'm disappointed because I'll tell you something, having been somebody who comes from a society that was subjugated, to avoid the tremendous shame of it, I have entertained a little hope. Well, I hope they were worthy subjugators.
Wow.
And it turns out that even that is questionable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I see it happening. I am not surprised, and I'm hoping that it will enable us globally also to realize that we need to change things, and I think it's possible. I mean, I don't know how many these people are who are actually pushing this globalizing agenda, but it can't be that many. And so if people everywhere decide that we want to think of something different, I think it will happen. Obviously, this is midterm. It's not short term. I don't think I'll live to see it, but I think I can contribute towards it from now.
Yeah, thank you. I was today years old when I discovered that the fish that in my hometown in Ghana, coastal Ghana, is a delicacy. It's actually graded according to different degrees of, I would call it putrefaction. It was a very pungent smell, like it's kind of decayed, dried fish that's a delicacy, comes from Bergen. That the stockfish industry here, that was then globalized by the Hansa, is why we eat that in Ghana. And I literally had no idea until today. I went to the wharf and I looked at the Hansa Museum, and literally, like, there Ghana pops up. And I was, again, I'm somebody who spent my adult life learning about colonization and globalization, and I didn't know. And, you know, reading about that, it struck me that 99% of the Norwegians who were involved in the stockfish trade were not living a life of luxury and exploitation. They were living in quite similar conditions to the exploited in West Africa. It's the 1% who were exploiting and profiting and accumulating insane wealth from this trade. And that's one of the reasons race was invented, to distract us and divide us instead of seeing these exploitative systems at work. So I ask you the same question, Wanjiru, is this a specific moment in time? Is it shifting people's awareness about actually, you know, this othering that's existed between, for example, the way that Europeans and Americans consider themselves and then engage with African storytelling? Is that veil thinning?
I want to tell you a story about the Macmillan Library, and I'll mention my book as well. But as you asked that question, I thought about the first time we had to create the digital catalog for the library. I'll back up a little bit. We adopted this 90-year-old library in the middle of Nairobi. It's the oldest one in Nairobi, and we took it as it is. And 9 years ago, when we walked in to adopt it, it looked like a time capsule of Nairobi in 1930s. Yeah. Because the library, Macmillan, was built for the exclusive use of the white British colonial settlers in 1931. And for 28 years of that library's life, Kenyans couldn't use it. So everything in there was an ode to our colonial legacy. And it was kept the same in 1958 when it was handed over to the Nairobi City Council. The council took it, but just kind of froze it in time. So until 2017, when we took it over, nothing had changed. The collection hadn't changed. The art hadn't changed. The only thing that had changed was the librarians. So these two young black women take over this library, and the first thing we asked them is, how many books do you have and what are they? And they didn't know. Wow. So we had to create this catalog for them. And we had young interns. I think that the oldest intern we had was maybe 24 years old. And we gave them laptops and stickers and pens and told them, we're going to label every single book and enter it on the spreadsheet. And it took us about 9 months to do that work. But around month 4, we felt the energy of the interns we're working with completely dip. And these are people who were happy to have jobs, we were paying them well, they were working in town, they were just like, this is heaven, but suddenly they were beginning to just get weighed down by the work because we're interacting with these collections that othered them completely. The Barbarians of Africa, some of the titles of those books are still there, and we're having to interact with them because it's not taught in school, the kind of depth of colonization. We don't talk about it in our homes because I think it's too painful, it's too soon. My mother can't speak to me about colonization. So these young interns were interacting with their history for the first time in the most visceral way possible.
And it's violence.
It's violence. Yeah. And we had to then hire counselors to be in the room to talk to them about all the things they were feeling. And the main emotion was anger. I'm like, how were we not taught this? Why was this kept from us? And that's been the spirit of the work that we do. So I think that the moment is kind of, it's such a thin layers, it's kind of like baking pie, right? It's one thing after the other after the other. And I think that the work I do with libraries is it's a complete direct answer to the questions that those interns asked us. How could we not know? Because there's been an erasure of the past. So that library will stay as it is. Even when we restore it, we will keep those collections there and then respond to them with other collections that are able to have them in conversation. I want my books to sit alongside those racist ones because then we can have a painful and almost violent conversation, but a necessary one. And then on the question of my writing with the havoc of choice, with that book, it's all about Kenyans. I think I refuse to kind of let the West seep into that story. But the ripples, I can see it causing is very similar. The violence happened in 2007. We still don't talk about it as much as we should. So there are young people who pick up my book and they're like, I now know why my parents won't talk to me about what happened in '07. And we're having a lot of uprising with the young people in Kenya at the moment. We had 2 years of protests. Protests are now becoming aware of our life. And I think the book is one reason, right? You're gonna read The Havoc of Choice, and then you interact with Boniface Mwangi, who's one of our most vocal activists, and you're gonna see kind of his trajectory and things, and it adds up. So I think that the kind of globalization will have to start locally. We're going to have to begin to see that what's happening in the West is exactly what's happening in Kenya when leaders don't think beyond the bridge of their noses and therefore are making choices that don't really work for us. And I think those are the layers that I'm here to build on, and that's what's happening. My favorite readers are young readers because they then have these conversations with their parents about, okay, you guys, when you were voting, what was the formula and how can we undo it? And that's, for me, a really important ingredient to this work.
Thank you so much. I want to make time for questions. We only have 10 minutes. So if you have a question, please raise your hand clearly. And if you don't, that's fine. I have plenty more I'd like to ask. But I want to give you a chance. Don't be shy. I know that when we're closing, there'll be loads of hands up. So I should have warned you in advance. Yes, hi. And a young girl who's a writer or who just wants to make a difference in general?
Try to get published, but she's scared and she knows that it can be rough. Because I was very inspired by your story about going back and asking about your book. And I know that there's a lot of people who really wants to say something, but are afraid of being rejected or feeling foolish. So that is my question.
Thank you. Do you have advice?
Yes, my advice is right. To understand that it is going to be a challenging process. When people have things they want to say and feel urgent about it, it's often because they have something that is troubling them emotionally also. And so the writing process is often a way of confronting that. No matter how the story comes out, that emotional process has to be in the page somehow. And this is what people will actually relate to, which is why you find books like mine and Wanjiru's will resonate in Norway. It's because of that common human emotion that has been put into it. But it can be a very challenging process. And so to understand that this fear is part of the process. I'm afraid every morning when I go in and I think, will I write any sense today? And sometimes I don't. It happens. So to understand that is part of the whole process, and so it doesn't matter, and just to put things down. And sometimes it will seem like one has written something that's practically unintelligible. That's also part of it, because these things are coming from a very deep place inside one. They don't come out fully formed. The writing is the process of the forming. So just go ahead and do it. Who said that before? Do it.
Do it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
I wasn't expecting
They have not paid enough money to be mentioned on the stage. I love what you said about fear. I've learned to acknowledge fear as a sign that I'm on the right track. If something doesn't scare me, I probably won't do it. And so I think you've got to do things afraid. But the way that I kind of get over my fear is I bury myself in research. So I'm a trained journalist, and for me, facts are like my security blanket. And the thing, I don't know about how many of you know this, but the way that Wikipedia works is that they encourage everybody to write about something they're an expert on. So if you make a really good cup of coffee, then you're an expert. If you braid hair really well, you're an expert. And so when I'm trying to tackle something that's scary, I make myself an expert in that thing by talking to people, by surrounding myself with information about it. I spent about a year researching an election that I experienced because I wanted to become an expert at that particular, not all elections, just that '07 one. And I hope that Kenyans in the room, please, not all elections, just that one. Because I keep getting asked to speak about elections. And I'm just like, I don't know. I want to talk about that election, not all the others, because I'm an expert in the '07 election. I'm an expert in libraries in Kenya. And I think if you can have your fear lead the fact finding, the knowledge finding, then it kind of kind of washes it away, and I have comfort in facts, in knowledge, and in questions as well.
That's so powerful. Thank you both so much. And may I summarize two other things that I feel these two incredible writers said? One is writing for your authentic audience, because I was struck that you both wrote for you were not thinking what will sell globally, what will reach people in Norway. You were writing from your authentic desire to tell a story, and that has reached Norway because you were being true to what you know and cared about. So don't center what other people will think, right? What matters to you. And secondly, I think these events are amazing. Obviously, I love them, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But as an aspiring writer, I think there's a danger of coming to festivals and it looks effortless. Like, you know, we're three writers who just have books published and we go around talking about them and it looks like it's so successful. What you don't see is books that we've all written, I suspect, that have never been published, may never be published, or ideas that never turned into a book, or rejections before we got published. And you know, I personally love engaging with stories of other writers about their previous rejections and failures. I know it's a bit sick, but it makes me feel so good. For example, Marlon James, who won the Booker Prize, talked about his first book where he got rejected 90 times. And he destroyed the manuscript, and he asked everyone he'd ever emailed it to, because it was in the era of email, to also destroy it because he was so disgusted with himself. And one friend decided to disobey that command and keep a copy. And that is the copy that ended up becoming a bestseller. So, you know, people reach a real low point. Rejection is hard and it can be really extreme, but there are so many amazing stories of writers who didn't give up. And as a result, we get to read their stories. So I personally find a lot of comfort in hearing that. So engage with other writers' stories of rejection and struggle, because it's weirdly empowering. Thank you so much for the question. Hello. Sorry, there's a mic coming to you.
Thank you. Okay. Tsitsi, I'm going to ask this question in a way that doesn't get anybody into trouble, but is there any place that you wish that your books were available that they currently aren't?
Oh.
Okay. Well, you know, like I said, I don't engage with anything beyond the writing. And there's a reason for that. Because it's just too stressful. I have a Southern African publisher, and that publisher sits in Cape Town. And they don't do a good job of distributing my works. And there's nothing I can do about it. And being an older writer, female, from Zimbabwe, it's a bit of a challenge, you know, so I say to myself, I don't have to take on anything more. Wanjiru, I do fully understand everything that you're up against, but from where I'm standing and I see the amount of publishing that is coming from young African women writers, I kind of get the sense that maybe it is not as difficult as it was. Just as it was not as difficult for me to be published. When I started my writing career, I would talk to other women in Zimbabwe, and they would tell me, you know, I wanted to write, and my husband wouldn't let me, and he burnt the manuscript. So it was already better for me, you know. So I just feel that I cannot extend myself much further. I also do a lot of work with women filmmakers on the continent. I have a Pan-African organization that I'm working with and passing on skills there. So I just cannot do it. And of course it annoys people because they think I'm responsible for the books not being available. Yeah. But it's just something I have to swallow. But yes, so indeed I would wish that they were available in Zimbabwe, more easily available in many African countries.
Thank you for your honest answer. Thank you for the question. I think we've got time for one last question, if it's quick. Yes, there's a hand over here. Hello, hi. There's the mic coming around. Just let it get to you.
Very simple question.
What do you think about Bergen?
This is my second time in Bergen, and I will always hold Bergen as the place where I first jumped into the ice cold sea.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you, Teresa, if you're in the room. So saunas and cold plunges are just a thing, but I went hiking today, and the city is breathtaking.
Yeah.
It's breathtaking, it's peaceful, and it's so quiet. So it might be a really good city to come back and write in. I don't know.
Is that a hint?
Yes.
Somebody
Subtle, not so
offering
subtle
a
hint.
writer's retreat. Could anyone in the room be able to make that available?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Tsitsi, you only got here last night?
Last night, and so I haven't really seen Bergen yet, but if we meet after I have, I will let you know.
I went to 2 coffee shops to write, one yesterday, one today, and they were both 2 of my now favourite coffee shops for writing. So either that was an incredibly lucky success rate, or this is a great city for writing in coffee shops. And I tried to go for a run this morning. I say run because I went up the mountain, and it was more like a slow walk, but it's stunning. So yeah, I found it really beautiful. Really beautiful. But I will say, I've been, as you could probably tell, doing some research into the history, and there's a selective centering of some historical monuments, in my opinion. I'll leave it at that.
Great.
Thank you. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you so much. Are you signing books? Advertise that then.